week 6 of the fantasy football season. And here's a few tight ends I would start this week. The first guy is Hunter Henry of the New England Patriots. I recommended Henry as an ad on the waiver wire this week here. And the last 2 games now, he's starting to get things going with Mac Jones and this Patriot offense. Week 4 versus Tampa, 4 catches, 32 yards, and a touchdown. And week 5 at Houston, 6 catches, 75 yards, and a touchdown. And in week 6 here, he's got a good matchup versus the Dallas Cowboys that give up the 11th most fantasy points to tight end. So right here, Mac Jones, he uses Hunter Henry as a security blanket. And Henry's outplayed Jonnu Smith, the other free agent tight end, obviously. They signed this offseason from the Tennessee Titans. So in this game, I think Henry could possibly find the end zone once again versus Dallas. And Dallas, I know they've had some decent ball games on defensive lately, but they still give up a lot of yards. So I think Henry has a good one. The next tight end I would start this week's Tyler Higbee of the Los Angeles Rams. So he's got a good matchup this week, and you pretty much play all your Rams versus the New York Giants. The Giants give up the 7th most fantasy points to tight ends this season. So Higbee in week 5, he got banged up in that ball game at Seattle, but he came back after suffering the injury, and he finished 2 catches, 14 yards, and he did find the end zone, though. That obviously saved his fantasy day. But right here at the New York Giants, I think he's going to have a good ball game here as Tyler Higbee. It wouldn't surprise me to see him get 50, 60 yards and possibly find the end zone. So right here, fire up all your Rams this week. The next tight end is Dawson Knox of the Buffalo Bills. So he's been one of the best pickups in fantasy football so far this season. And right here, he's got 5 touchdowns already to start the year. He is Dawson Knox. So the last 3 weeks, he's really taken off. Week 3 versus Washington, 4 catches, 49 yards, and a touchdown. Week 4 versus Houston, 5 catches, 37 yards, and 2 touchdowns. In week 5 at Kansas City, 3 catches, $117, and a touchdown. And week 6 here at Tennessee, I know Tennessee gives up the 2nd least amount of fantasy points to tight ends, but Dawson Knox here, he's on fire. Him and Josh Allen have a good rapport, and he's a big red zone threat. So I think in this game, you could pencil him in for the touchdown and at least 50 or 60 yards. The next tight end I would start this week's Dalton Schultz of the Dallas Cowboys. So Dalton Schultz, he's one of Dak Prescott's favorite targets this season. And like I've mentioned a lot in my videos, last season he was targeting Schultz a hell of a lot of time, especially right before he went down with the injury as Dak. So this season, it's been a great one for Schultz, and he's been one of the best tight ends so far in fantasy points. So the last 3 weeks for Schultz, week 3 versus Philly, 6 catches, 80 yards, 2 touchdowns. Week 4 versus the Panthers, 6 catches, 58 yards with a touchdown. And week 5 versus the Giants, 6 catches, 79 yards. So right here, week 6 at the Patriots, I think in this one, he's going to go for 45 yards and find the end zone, because right now he's a top target at Dak's. This Cowboy offense is rolling. And Schultz, he's a guy that defenses aren't going to roll coverage to, obviously, when you got an Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb as your wideouts in that lineup in the 5th and final tight end. I would start this week's Mike Gesicki of the Miami Dolphins. So Gesicki, he's been playing real good football, especially since Jacoby Brissett has come in at quarterback, with obviously Tua Tagovailoa going out with the injury in week 2. So the last 3 games since Brissett's been in there, week 3 at Vegas, 10 catches, 86 yards. Week 4 versus the Colts, 5 catches, 57 yards, and a touchdown. And week 5 at Tampa Bay, not the greatest of games, but still a decent ball game for a PPR league. 4 catches, 43 yards. So right here in week 6 at Jacksonville, they give up the 10th most amount of fantasy points to tight ends. And I think once again we could see Mike Gesicki have a good ball game here for this Dolphin team, and especially if they're trailing in this game. This is a battle of 2 teams who've been pretty poor this season, especially Jacksonville with 0-5 and the Dolphins at 1-4. So I think a lot of passing we're going to see, and I think Gesicki has a good game. So that's a few tight ends I would start here in week 6 of the fantasy football season.